We are back on another episode of Sports Slice, and when I say there is so much for us to dive into in the sports world, I truly mean it today, because there's a lot that has transpired in the past 7 days since the last episode of Sports Slice, and we're going to go dive right into the college football world. Now, it seems like every single week over the past month, I've been talking about the Brendan Sorsby situation and the fact that now he's eligible with the NCAA. But as we saw last week, the NCAA, a lot of NCAA teams, Big 12 teams, the conference that Texas Tech is in, are talking about not playing Texas Tech if Brendan Sorsby was allowed to play in games and whatnot. In fact, the Big 12 conference, they met last week about the possibility of preventing teams from playing Texas Tech, not only in football, but in all their sports. We're not going to see this situation unfold. Brendan Sorsby announced that he is going to the supplemental draft for the NFL. This is something I thought was going to actually happen a month ago when this whole gambling saga unfolded originally. It's like hey, you're not getting your eligibility back. Let's go to the NFL, which, now mind you, this whole thing is so fascinating to me because Brendan Sorsby's team had to have known at least somewhat about this whole gambling thing. Now, I could be completely wrong, but just from the information that we know, it sounds like a lot of people knew, and it was a very well-kept secret, I guess you could say. Apparently, allegedly, Cincinnati knew about it, right? And so if so many people know about this gambling problem, I think it's fair to say, why didn't Brendan Sorsby just declare for the NFL draft? Because, you go and transfer to Texas Tech, right? And, he's getting a big NIL deal, what, 5-6 million? But if you know that there's a possibility that this could come out and it ruins your eligibility, why don't you just go to the NFL? You're getting a contract. The only thought that I have behind it is maybe they were concerned that if this came out after he was drafted, the NFL could punish him, which is always a possibility. However, interesting enough, the lawyer that Brendan Sorsby hired, Jeffrey Kessler, he kind of had two roles when he was originally hired. Obviously, his first role was, hey, we're getting Brendan Sorsby his eligibility back. That's priority number one. They did that, shockingly enough. And I still, I struggle. I truly struggle to wrap my head around how in the world did Brendan Sorsby get his eligibility back? And every single college in America has 1,000% the right to be upset and not want to play Texas Tech, right? Like we talked about this on the last previous episode of Sports Slice. Like Ohio State had to stop recruiting Micah Parsons just because he walked across the college game day set, and they had to self-report to the NCAA about a recruiting violation with that. Like, or you go to Michigan with Jim Harbaugh buying a cheeseburger for, a player in his family, or excuse me, a recruit in his family, and he gets penalized for that. Like, you go and look back in the past 5 years of different examples of these just ridiculous recruiting violations and, rules that were bended and not really broken, like buying a cheeseburger, like you shouldn't get in trouble for that. You bet on sports, specifically, you're at a school and you bet on said school while a member of said team, regardless of it's, you're betting for your team to win, like a Pete Rose situation, like this truly is, or you're betting your team to lose, like you shouldn't do it. You can't do it. You can't be eligible if you end up doing something like that. But regardless, the courts ruled in favor of him. But going back on the tangent, away from the tangent, I should say, with Jeffrey Kessler. So his original purpose was to get Brendan Sorsby's eligibility back. His second purpose, though, was to make sure the NFL doesn't try to punish Brendan Sorsby if, say, he didn't get his eligibility back and he had to go to the supplemental draft. Because the NFL could say, hey, we're not touching Brendan Sorsby because of XYZ reason, obviously that being the gambling situation. I don't think that's going to be the case. Now, the supplemental draft is something that doesn't happen very often. One of the more notable players to actually come out of the supplemental draft is a man by the name of Josh Gordon, who, now mind you, Josh Gordon could have probably been one of the best receivers in the NFL if he didn't have all of his off the field problems. For those that don't know what the supplemental draft is essentially it's players that had some sort of issue leading up to the NFL draft, or maybe they declared late kind of thing, which doesn't normally happen. But it's usually if a player has some unique, outstanding circumstance, like Brendan Sorsby with this whole gambling saga. They enter what the NFL has called the supplemental draft. So essentially, it's a draft for one player, and it is almost like a blind auction, a silent auction. So every NFL team, all 32 NFL teams, will put up a draft pick to get Brendan Sorsby in this situation. So, for example, if you are the Cleveland Browns, which I think is going to be one of two teams that are really going to try, maybe even three teams to try to get Brendan Sorsby. If you're the Cleveland Browns and you throw out a fourth round pick, let's say it's, a mid fourth round pick, you may get Brendan Sorsby, you may not. If, let's say, the Jets, who are another team that I think, in fact, I think the Jets will probably get Brendan Sorsby. But if the Jets throw out a third round pick and they are the highest bidder, now nobody knows what everybody else is bidding, quote unquote, for this pick, or excuse me, for Brendan Sorsby with their picks. So if I'm the Jets, I give up the 91st pick, whatever, and the Browns give up 121st pick. The Jets would get Brendan Sorsby if they ended up being the highest bidder, gave up the earliest pick in the draft. But the caveat is you lose that pick for the draft the next year. So let's say, for example, let's say you have the first overall pick. You give up a first round pick to get Brendan Sorsby, which I don't think anybody will do. I think there's a chance that there's a second round pick given up. But if you gave up your first round pick, guess what? You don't draft in the first round for the next NFL draft. That's the one unique thing with the supplemental draft. Now, with that, though, like I said, I think there's three teams that are really going to do a deep dive in the next week or two, and some have already done so. But I think you're going to really see a lot of chatter in these next, week and a half with the Jets, the Browns, and the Arizona Cardinals. Now, I know the Cardinals just drafted Carson Beck, Jacoby Brissett. Who knows what Jacoby Brissett's doing? I mean, the guy's holding out. They also have Gardner Minshew. Kind of a weird quarterback room. The Jets also have a very strange quarterback room. You bring Geno Smith back, but Geno Smith is kind of at the tail end of his career. And who better? I mean, Brendan Sorsby, let's just be honest. Brendan Sorsby would be a top 15 pick in next year's NFL draft. He would have been a first round pick in this past season's draft. So you're getting a first round talent, whoever ends up getting him in the supplemental draft. And I know there was a lot of people that were like, well, what if he doesn't go? What if nobody wants to use the pick? Guess what, guys? Somebody is going to get Brendan Sorsby in the supplemental draft. There's not many things in life you can guarantee. This is a guarantee. And I don't think it's going to be a fourth round that you're going to be able to get Brendan Sorsby. It is going to be a third or a second round draft pick to get Brendan Sorsby. And I'm telling you, if Brendan Sorsby is able to play in the NFL, like you don't know at the end of the day what Roger Goodell, what the NFL rules with the whole gambling, because it's a really delicate situation, and obviously Brendan Sorsby has his lawyer to help him mitigate the situation, I guess is the right word to use. But you don't know what the NFL is going to come out and say, because this all is just unfolding live essentially for us. So it's going to be a fascinating development, I guess you could say, over the next week and a half. Um, but I think Brendan Sorsby will be a franchise quarterback for whoever decides to grab him in the supplemental draft. Now, sticking on quarterbacks, you know, next year's NFL draft is going to be a really talented one, which is obviously also a big deal with the supplemental draft is, there's so much talent in this upcoming draft class that, like I said, I think a team is going to give up a second round pick. Brendan Sorsby, I think, will be worth it. But again, you're giving up a second round pick in one of the most loaded draft classes we've seen in recent history, with the prized possession of that draft class being none other than Arch Manning, who many people believe will be the first overall pick next April. However, Steve Sarkisian does not necessarily think that that's going to be the case, as he's actually recently said that he would not be surprised if Arch Manning actually decided to forego the draft next year and come back to Texas. Now, it could be wishful thinking. Arch Manning's making a lot of money playing college football. Now, he's going to make more in the NFL, obviously. But I think we're starting to see a trend. Now, I'm not buying the whole Arch Manning missing, or excuse me, skipping out on next year's draft and coming back to Texas for another year. I think that's just more wishful thinking. However, though, I do think Steve Sarkisian has a point, not with Arch Manning, but with a lot of players in college football now, because of the introduction of the NIL, which I have been a supporter of NIL since the very beginning, and I will always be a supporter, even though I think that how the NIL is done now is not exactly how it's supposed to be. I'm more in the boat of NIL, your name, image, likeness. If Coca-Cola wants to sponsor Arch Manning and give Arch Manning $1 million to be in a commercial, that's okay. What I'm not a big fan of, and a lot of teams are doing it because there's no rules against it, is these booster clubs making these $30, $40 million slush funds, we'll call it. You don't like to use the word slush fund, but that's essentially what it is. But these $30, $40 million slush funds and saying, hey, we want to get whoever from Middle Tennessee State and we're going to pay him $2 million just because we can. That's kind of where I'm not the biggest fan of. But again, it's nobody's fault, right? The NCAA, I don't want to say they allow it because they've tried to challenge things in the courts, but they've lost. So, like, there's no policing of the whole NIL ordeal going on. So, go and make your money that you can. A lot of guys, 99% of these players in college, specifically college football, are not going to the NFL. So if you can make $4 or $5 million, go and do it. So I think we're seeing a trend of guys going to the NFL. Rookies in the NFL are older, which is good for the NFL in the aspect of, hey, you've got a 23-year-old rookie going up against 25, 30-year-olds, whatever the case may be. It's a little bit better than a 21-year-old. It's just the body's more developed, all that sort of stuff. So it's a fascinating trend, and I think you'll continue to see actually guys stay for that third and fourth, and in some cases fifth year, just because you can pump out an extra $3-4 million just playing 12, 13 games in a college football season. So I think that's going to be something that we'll continue to see, and it could get to the point where people are staying 3 and 4 years, in some situations 5 years, and in some situations 6 and 7 years. Uh, but I mean, it's unreal right now with college. But what's also unreal is New York City right now. Now, shout out the Knicks. I mean, over 50 years of coming so close, and in some situations not coming close at all. But the Knicks are one of the most historic franchises in all of North American sports. As a Philly sports fan, I was cheering for the Knicks. I will be the first one to admit it. And as we talked about in Sports Slice last week, Knicks fans deserve this championship. Now, I think one of the coolest things that came out of this championship run um, was number one, seeing the fans' reactions after every single win in New York. Like, it felt like I was watching a bunch of Eagles fans with how they were acting. However, things got a little out of hand when they won the finals the other night, which, like, I don't want to say you expect, but Knicks fans are crazy in a good way. They're very passionate. They're very passionate, just like Philly sports fans. What was the most crazy of the whole situation, though, is the World Cup's also going on at the same time. And you've got Brazil, who was in New York City playing Morocco, which we'll touch on the World Cup here in a second. But you got Brazil playing Morocco in the World Cup the day before, I believe it was, before the Knicks won the NBA Finals. So you got a bunch of Brazilian fans out there too that are experiencing American culture, but they're also experiencing the Knicks winning a championship and getting to see essentially the city turn into an absolute battleground of destroying school buses and tearing down light posts and setting things on fire. It was unreal. It was absolutely unreal. The one thing that they didn't do that Philly fans do, and maybe I'm wrong, I just didn't see it, but they just don't climb the poles like Philly sports fans do. I mean, that whole thing is unreal. I'm gonna go on a random tangent here, but I was in New Orleans when the Eagles beat the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. And that morning, we were filming a TikTok. It was doing the first ever tush push on Bourbon Street. Wild. Um, but while we were doing it, there was actually like the city officials. I don't know what their correct term would be, but they were actually putting grease on the really, really old poles in New Orleans. And they were like, it popped up on the news of, hey, don't jump on these poles because they're from, hundreds of years ago, not hundreds, but a long time ago. They're 100-year-old poles. They're going to fall over. So just a random tangent, but um, yeah, shout out the Knicks. Shout out the Knicks. Great season. Great run in the postseason. I mean, I still can't believe that I thought the 76ers had a fighting chance against the Knicks, and not only a fighting chance, but there was an Instagram post on my story that I posted that I thought the 76ers were going to sweep the Knicks. That didn't happen. But another cool thing that came out of the Knicks winning the NBA Finals was Nike created an ad for the Knicks and their fans. Now, we got to give a little round of applause for Nike in general, because they are so quick with these ads. Now, I'm going to go back to being in New Orleans, the Eagles, Chiefs, right? The first commercial after the Eagles beat the Chiefs in the Super Bowl was Kermit the Frog narrating a highlight of the Eagles beating the Chiefs. Now, we all know what that is. Kermit the Frog, Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes is an Adidas athlete. So, like, it was a good little shot at, Patrick Mahomes. Fun. It was all in fun. But that was like the first ad that I saw from Nike where I was like, yo, this is legit. Like, this is really good marketing. And ever since, any sort of big sporting event, whether it's the WNBA, that had a really cool ad for the Las Vegas Aces, whether it was the Masters with Rory, Like the Nike has done a really good job with these ads, and that continued for the NBA Finals as they had like this guy that was running on the sidewalk, celebrating, and like I don't know how they filmed it. Truthfully, I do not know how they filmed it, but he comes running down the sidewalk and then he enters like the street kind of thing, and it's a bunch of Knicks fans celebrating, and then it just pops up and said never slept, always dreamed, with a little Nike swoosh. I kid you not, the music that they added with it too, like I sat there and I was getting chills. I was like, yo, this is textbook marketing. Like I don't know who, and I talked about this on my TikTok. I don't know who came up with the ad, but whoever did, and I don't have this power, but we need to get that individual a massive pay raise and tell them to keep pumping these out because they are just unreal. And since we are talking about Nike, we got to talk about some rumors going on in the Nike world. Now, Caitlin Clark is one of the biggest Nike athletes right now. Caitlin Clark, Nike has a handful of superstars in the WNBA. You've got Caitlin Clark is a Nike athlete. Obviously, Asia Wilson, she's got the A1s, unreal shoe. Also, by the way, so many cool colorways. Candy corn, easily one of my favorites. And then you've got Sabrina Ionescu, who also has her own shoe. Now, Caitlin doesn't. We're going to put some quotation marks there. Caitlin doesn't. She's got a lot of personalized shoes that are Kobe's. That's changing. So Caitlin Clark actually changed her Instagram earlier today to Caitlin1. And then it also, her profile, she changed her profile picture. And it's not a picture of her. It is a picture of essentially the side of a shoe. Don't know what the shoe looks like or anything of that sort. But it sounds like when you change your Instagram name from Caitlin Clark to Caitlin1, and you also change your profile picture to some part of a shoe, Nike is giving Caitlin Clark her own shoe, like the A1 and Sabrina's shoes, which is awesome. It's awesome. And I'm going to be the first one to say that this shoe is going to be one of the most difficult and sought after shoes we've seen in a very long time, just like Asia's shoes were. I mean, and still are actually. But when her first shoe came out, it was funny. I was actually in um, Tampa for the women's Final Four, and Nike was actually doing a pop up, like surprise pop up for the A1s, and like they just went out like this. Boom. It was 2 seconds and gone. And for the first month, 2 months, that shoe was just impossible to get. Now it's a little bit easier now, but I think with the massive backing and massive following and large fan base that the Indiana Fever have and Caitlin Clark has, it's going to be a while if you don't get Caitlin Clark's personal shoe, whether it's called the Caitlin1 or whatever it may be. You're probably not going to be getting that shoe for a long time. So, I mean, it's great though. I think this is a great move by Nike. Like I said, you've got one of the. I mean, Caitlin Clark has such a large following and has played such a vital role in the WNBA and women's basketball in general. And I think it's great to see. So shout out. We're giving just so many shout outs today. Shout out, a little round of applause for Nike, for Caitlin Clark. It's not confirmed, but the writing is on the wall that Caitlin Clark's getting her own shoe. Now, speaking of shoes, no, we're not going to talk about shoes anymore. We're going to talk about the World Cup, though. The World Cup has been one of the most fascinating things for me, and it's not even necessarily the sports side of it. Now, Yes, the games are great, all that kind of stuff. What I am finding the most fascinating about the World Cup is the fans. It's these individuals coming from all around the world who are experiencing the American culture for the first time. My entire Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, whatever it may be, is just filled with these people from Europe, people from South America, people from Australia, wherever it may be, coming to America and are like, wait a minute, this is not what we expected the country to be like. Specifically, when talking about the stadiums, like so many people on social media are like, we have seen what 20 different games, and there have been 20 different stadiums. Like, and truthfully, the United States could host 3 straight World Cups and not use any of the stadiums as repeats. Like, America just has so many massive stadiums, whether it's college, whether it's obviously NFL stadiums. Like, it's crazy. It's crazy. And it really like as us as Americans, we kind of just like it's just second nature. But it really when you see people talking about it, it's like, you know what? Like, yeah, that's one of the unique things about this country is with our professional sports the way that they are. It's not like we have like 4 or 5 stadiums. Like we have 300 stadiums you could play in. So it's funny seeing that, but the thing that's even more funny with the fans coming to America is them trying the different foods in the different areas that they are. So for example, I was in Philly. So it's a long story, but I was actually the past 2 weeks I've been doing some traveling. I was in Washington D.C. with TikTok, and then was in New Jersey, and then was in Philly. But while I was in Philly this past weekend, Ecuador was playing Ivory Coast. And let me tell you, Ecuador's fans completely took over the city of Philadelphia. It was something like I had never seen it before. Now, me being a diehard Eagles fan, I'm so used to just seeing a million Eagles fans. There was like maybe 10 to 15 people that were wearing Eagles stuff in the couple hours that we were walking around downtown Philly. Everybody was wearing yellow for Ecuador. Like they were playing that night, and it was 11 a.m., noon, and you would think that Ecuador was just about to play the game, and everybody was walking to the link, or more known now with FIFA, Philadelphia Stadium, since they changed all the names to from their branded names to just the names of the city that the stadium is in, which makes a lot of sense because if I'm a Ecuador fan, like I don't know that the Eagles Stadium is the Eagles Stadium or it's Lincoln Financial Field. I'm just looking for Philadelphia Stadium, so it makes a lot of sense that they did that. But the fans trying the foods is just so comical to me. And so again, one of the most iconic spots in Philly, and I think a lot of people know this, is the Reading Terminal Market. It was filled to the brim with Ecuador's fans. So I got to see this first person. My For You page came to life of there was a massive line of Ecuador's fans trying Gus's cheesesteaks. Everybody wants to try a cheesesteak. You're in Philly. Philly's known for the cheesesteaks. There was a fan who posted something on TikTok. He's from the UK and he was doing a food review of a Philly cheesesteak. Like it was so comical because he was just the way that he was describing like the meat and stuff, how it falls out of the cheesesteak and whatnot. It was very entertaining. Um, but it's just so fascinating, getting to see these fans um, come to America for a lot of them the first time and see, hey, like American sports, like we kind of go all out. Actually, like we're kind of extra, which is what we all love. Um, but more so on the actual sports side of things. Things have been kind of wild in the fact that we have already seen 8 ties already. It's a little uncommon. One of the most shocking ties, not for me, but for a lot of other people, was Morocco and Brazil tying. Now, Brazil, a lot of people think that Brazil could win the World Cup. Same thing with Spain. Spain also tied. Um, Morocco was my dark horse picked to actually win the World Cup. Now, is it going to happen? Probably not. But Morocco is just one of those. Morocco, like when you look at their fixtures, and leading into the World Cup, like they have a solid team. They've played well. I believe they're 12th or 13th in the FIFA rankings coming into the World Cup. They have a brand new manager. So that was when looking at Morocco and deciding, I'm going to pick just some random team to be my dark horse pick. Um, the one thing that kind of scared me a little bit was Morocco's manager doesn't have a lot of experience, but his teams, and he was like the U17 coach for Morocco, and like another was it U21, but all the teams that he's coached and was the like head manager of, they've done well. So I think that continues, and I mean we've already seen them tie with Brazil. So Morocco could lose the next two and not make it out of the group stages. I don't think that happens. I think we're going to see Morocco kind of make a run here, and who knows what happens. You get out of the group stage and you're into the elimination bracket. Like, all bets are off. Anything can happen. Like, we've seen so many upsets, so many wild situations where teams should not win. Do this year in sports. Like, this is the year of upsets, and I am all for it. Now, a team that I hope does not get upset is obviously Team USA. They've looked good. Now, I know it was only one game, but I'm telling you, I will be the first one to say I am not the biggest soccer fan in the world, and it's there's nothing against the sport. It's just, let's just be real. Team USA the men's national team has not been very good. And I believe it was Landon Donovan. Maybe it wasn't Landon Donovan. There was a former Team USA soccer player a long time ago. This was years ago. It might have been 2-3 years ago now. That was kind of giving it to the men's team of, hey, like you are being gifted a potential generation of soccer fans if you just win, but you just don't take advantage of the opportunity that's being put on a silver platter. But I'm hoping that this is finally the time. And if you know what, if Team USA makes a run to the final 16, or make it to the semifinals, whatever it may be, like as long as they get out of the group stage, which they should, and they win that first game in the elimination bracket, maybe two games in the elimination bracket, you will make so many people truly start to care about soccer, or as some people refer to it as football. Um, but right now, like I think we're starting to see, like there's a lot of hype right now because you have also got the World Cup in the United States. And I mean, you throw all that together, like there's a lot of patriotism, and people want to see Team USA win. So I don't know if they'll go very far if they have to play Spain, if they have to play Brazil. They're probably not going to beat either one of those. I'd love to see Team USA play England. Could happen, probably not. But if it does, that would be really cool. I think if it goes how everybody's expecting, Team USA makes it to the knockout stages. I think a lot of people are predicting them to play Egypt. I don't know much about Egypt. I saw that they they kind of gave Belgium a run for their money today. Um, and that's a little concerning to me. But I think part of the issue that we're seeing is a lot of these teams are struggling with the heat. Heat has been playing a factor all across whether it's in Mexico, whether it's the games in Canada, whether it's obviously the games in the United States, specifically on the East Coast. In fact, FIFA is allowing teams to take water breaks during the first and second halves of the game, which makes a lot of sense. Obviously the players' health and safety comes first, and let's just be real. A England, maybe not so much England, but like a Belgium is not used to some of the humidity that we get here in the United States. And we've seen it from the fans too. I saw it firsthand actually. There were so many fans from Ecuador that had like the little personal fans, whether it's the ones that you wave like this or like the electronic ones, and are walking around just sweating. Now, mind you, we're in Philly. Philly can get hot, but it was probably like 87 degrees, 86 degrees. Sun's out, no clouds, no wind, nothing. It was a little humid, but nothing crazy. I'm just rocking a long sleeve shirt, shorts, whatever. It's nice to me. I'm from Arizona, so 120 is completely different than 85, 86 degrees. But all these, not all of them, but a lot of the Ecuador fans were struggling with the heat. And I would say Ivory Coast fans were too, but I'm going to be honest. I did not see a single Ivory Coast fan in Philly. I literally every corner I looked, I was like, all right. I even went before we went to the Reading Terminal Market. I was, looking up Ivory Coast uniform, all that kind of stuff. Nothing. Didn't see a single one. But the heat is playing a factor, and I think it will continue to play a factor as we progress through the month of June into July with the World Cup. But another thing that's coming out of the World Cup, which is awesome to see, Japan has kind of gone completely viral. Their fans, their team, because of specifically their fans cleaning their sections after games. It's kind of cool to see. And same thing with the Japanese team itself. They're cleaning their locker room after every single game. And like it's cool to see, not only people from around the world experience American culture, but also we're simultaneously seeing, other cultures come to America. Like that's not a normal thing where, you have a section full of Japan's fans, and after the game's over, they have trash bags themselves. They're picking up garbage. That just does not happen in America. So another shout out to Japan and Team Japan and their fans. It's awesome. Now we're going to this week's Slice of Unbelievable. We all know what it is. We haven't talked about it yet. I've talked about it for the past 5 episodes. This week's Slice of Unbelievable goes to the UFC Freedom 250, the fights at the White House. Unreal. Absolutely unreal. This was one of the best cards. I mean, the lead up, like, we knew it was going to be a really good card. We did not expect that all 7 fights would end in a TKO or a knockout. Like, what was the point of having judges? It was awesome. It was truly amazing. The big thing that everybody was talking about leading up, including myself, was what is the weather going to be like? The weather was looking pretty bleak there at 6 p.m. East Coast time, Sunday night. Looked bad. Looked really bad, actually. And as Dana White kind of explained, from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, there was supposed to be really bad weather. The fights were actually getting pushed back an hour, and they were kind of just doing some pre-show talk. But the storm actually kind of just broke off around the White House, and just everything went around the White House, and it was perfect weather in that 6 to 8 mile radius. They had roughly 100,000 fans at the Fan Fest. The fights, I can't get over the fights. The one fight that was the most disappointing though was Michael Chandler. I wanted Michael Chandler to kind of restart his career. He's 40 years old, like give it one last shot. Lost in a pretty bad way. I think it's time. It's time to hang up the gloves, Michael Chandler. 2-6 in the UFC now after his loss on Sunday. If that was Michael Chandler 10 years ago, could have a different story. But it's just, the mind's there. It's just the physical attributes just aren't there anymore. And it was actually really sad to watch. But you know who is back though? Sean O'Malley. The Sugar Show is officially back. His knockout was unreal. Like I truly think he had the most pressure. He was not fighting for a belt or anything, but he had the most pressure out of the entire card because everybody kept hyping up the fact that it's America versus Canada, like the little sibling rivalry and whatnot. All in good fun. But Sean O'Malley did exactly what he was gonna do. I mean, he said that he was gonna come in and and get a knockout, and he sure did. And I think he had one of the coolest celebrations as he gets a knockout and instantly salutes the American flag. Like, what? Like what made you think it? And Sean O'Malley was saying that like he had dreamt that moment. Like that was he visualized getting his knockout and then saluting the flag. Unreal. Credit to him. Also, credit to the man, the myth, the legend himself, Justin Gaethje. I don't know how he does it. Justin Gaethje, and he talks about it too. Justin Gaethje just gets into absolute like bar fight brawls in the octagon. And that man walks out of the cage like he didn't get punched once. Like you look at Ilya Toporia's face compared to Justin Gaethje, and you would think, wow, Justin Gaethje dominated that fight. Guess what? It was 2-2 going into the 5th round before Ilya Toporia's corner stopped the fight. Justin Gaethje barely had a scratch on his face. Ilya Topuria, you couldn't see his face. I mean, it was unreal. He had what, two orbital fractures. Like, couldn't see out of his it would have been his right eye after the first round, his left eye after the second round. Credit to Ilya though. I mean, there was a moment in that second round when he got the liver shot on Justin Gaethje. I was cheering for Justin Gaethje. But he got that liver shot on Justin Gaethje in the second round, and I was like, this could be over. But Justin Gaethje just he doesn't know when to stop, which was on full display. The guy just keeps pressing, just keeps going forward, and he'll just take a punch in the face and he'll get you with an uppercut. But I mean, you couldn't ask for a more entertaining 3 hours of the UFC. I think it'll go down in history as one of the most, it's not out yet, but it'll go down in history as one of the most watched sporting events in recent history, but also it could go down as one of the most influential sporting events of all time. I mean, this just opened up the door for so many more things. Could we see the UFC on an aircraft carrier? I mean, they're already talking about, I guess Dana White, President Trump wanted to have like a fight that was for the military. Like, are we having, potentially a fight on a military base? Aircraft carrier would be cool. He played a basketball game already on an aircraft carrier. I think that'd be sweet. But right now, there will probably never be another sporting event at the White House, which is okay. This was legit. The claw, the thing covering the octagon, unreal. Stadium was sweet. I think one of the coolest things too was the walkouts. Justin Gaethje's walkout, where he is literally in the Oval Office, looking at the Declaration of Independence, reading the Declaration of Independence, comes out like the entire event was so aesthetically pleasing. I think is probably the best way to describe it. And this is all politics aside. Like, I think all sports fans, regardless of what you think politically will agree, hey, like, this was pretty sweet. You take a step back and just look at it, and you just have to admire one person or group of people at the UFC having an idea, having a dream, and saying, "Hey, like, let's do it. Let's do it." I mean, this is that. Like, that's what America's built off of. You take chances, you take risks, you follow your dreams, and you get the UFC at the White House. Unreal. One of the weird things, though, that came out of the whole White House card had nothing to do with any of the fights, but DC was hacked. His Twitter account was hacked. Nobody really knows this whole saga, but what we do know is it wasn't real. But his like Twitter account got hacked and showed like these messages from Eric Trump asking if the UFC is rigged, if the UFC is real, who he should place bets on. It's not real. This is something that has caught wildfire, and there's so many people that are like, "Oh, it's real." Eric Trump sent out these tweets. He himself has said that he did not. DC himself has also said that he did not, even though there's a tweet that was posted from DC's Twitter account being appalled that, he would ask this stuff. It wasn't a real tweet. DC was saying that he thinks he was hacked. I I don't know, like, we don't know all the information, but I would go out just as a logical individual and say that it's not real. I'd be shocked if it was. I don't think it is. Actually, I'm 100% certain it's not real. But again, it's caught complete wildfire, and it's something that so many people are talking about. And you see the tweet and you don't see the whole story, and you say, "Well, this is not good." It's it's not real. I can safely say that it's not real, and it's something that's kind of being blown out of proportion, and that's one of the things that happens with social media. But nonetheless, I think we can all agree, as said before, the White House card was pretty sweet. But anyways, that's all we got for this episode of Sports Slice. Stay tuned for next week. We've got some fun guests. There's going to be some cool opportunities coming up here in the very near future. The Sports Slice podcast will be heading to Beaverton, Oregon here in 2 weeks. Well, it'll be 2 weeks for you guys. For the opening, the Nike is bringing back the opening. For those that don't know, it is a kind of a best of the best for high school football players. So you'll have a lot of 4 stars, a lot of 5 stars, some 3 stars, and some guys that are a little underrated right now. But essentially, it's a giant 7-on-7 tournament for these guys. And Nike is doing a whole big thing for some of the players in the NFL that used to be in the opening, kind of putting them in their Hall of Fame sort of thing. And Sports Slice is coming to the opening, so we're gonna get some fun interviews with some of the guys, and it's gonna be a couple really fun episodes for you guys. So you guys will not want to miss that. But signing off, peace.